Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. Buried Mesopotamia. One of the most incredible cities of Armenia is Ani, located on a great hilltop near the Akwarian River. In ancient times, it was called the City of 1001 Churches and the City of 40 Gates. By the 11th century, Ani had grown so large and so prosperous, it rivaled the other great cities of the time, like Constantinople and Cairo. It had over 100,000 people living within its walls. But as empires fought over the region, it was gradually destroyed. Much of the place is currently in ruins. Ancient churches from the Zoroastrian religion are crumbling shells scattered across a wasted landscape. In the 1880s, researchers found access to the secret world underneath the splendid medieval town. Beneath the ruined Zoroastrian temples, there is a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers carved into the hill centuries ago. Monks used to live in this place, sheltered within the earth as they lived solitary lives in service to God. And although the place was found over 130 years ago, it was only recently that people took an interest. Nowadays, researchers have been revealing underground structures in Ani's buried city. There are currently over 800 subterranean features. Chapels, reservoirs, shops, and tombs, tons of monasteries and quarters for monks. Yet the history of how Ani's underground city came into being is still a mystery we have yet to solve. Number 9. The Underground Fortress. There is a modest castle called Château de Brézé in France, located outside a small village in Loire Valley. It was built by Arthus de Maille Brézé in the middle of the 16th century. The building is surrounded by a dry moat and looks like any standard castle you might find in Europe. The lord of the castle commissioned it in fear of Viking invasions. Arthus de Maille Brézé was so afraid of being attacked by Vikings, or of anyone really, that he built a fortress underneath the castle. Underground, there is about a mile of tunnels connecting living spaces, storage areas, and standard medieval amenities. Arthus was truly obsessed with safety. He had the moat around the castle deepened to a ridiculous 60 feet. The castle was basically surrounded by a natural gorge that would kill anyone who accidentally fell in it. Then he went about the business of creating an underground refuge. It's accessible through the bottom of the moat, from where the tunnel was first dug. It allowed the family to defend themselves in the case of an attack and to flee in a hopeless situation. The underground fortress was equipped with a bakery, bedrooms, and space for horses and cattle. There were even defensive holes where archers could shoot the intruders with arrows without themselves being seen. You wouldn't know it just by looking at the place from the outside, but Château de Brézé is even more impressive beneath than above. Ironically enough, the family was never attacked. They never had to find out if the underground sanctuary was truly effective.
And now for number 8. But first, it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to Batris0901 and Ubaldo Myers for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about discoveries made underground.
Number 8. The Embalming Workshop. South of Cairo, near the not-so-famous Pyramid of Unas, an international team of archaeologists identified an underground embalming workshop. They discovered the fascinating complex of rooms in 2016. But it wasn't for almost 9 years until researchers were finally able to list all the different ingredients embalmers in the workshop used to create Egyptian mummies. The complex of rooms was found to contain 100 ceramic vessels. These vessels came from a very specific time, between 664 and 525 BC. A few of the vessels had inscriptions detailing their contents. Others were a bit harder to figure out. In early 2023, researchers published their study of the vessels using chemical analysis. They looked at the resins inside to put together a full list of embalming materials. Some of the vessels had labels like "put on the head" or "embalm with it." Such descriptions were a little too vague for archaeologists to make sense of, but with chemical analysis, they could identify the ingredients on a molecular level. They found resin from a tree native to the Philippines. They also found resin from a flowering plant that grows in other parts of Africa and Eurasia. The ancient Egyptian embalmers clearly had no supply chain issues with their merchants in faraway lands 2,500 years ago. The subterranean room itself was used for cleaning bodies and the embalming process. It was a single chamber where all the work to turn a corpse into a mummy was done. One of the most fascinating parts of this study was that not all the material was used specifically for preservation. There were substances to reduce the moisture of their skin, but there were also things to remove unpleasant smells from the bodies. Researchers say the chemical knowledge the embalmers had is nothing short of incredible. They even knew what substances could stop the spread of bacteria on the skin, basically using antifungal creams. Number 7. Mysterious Roman Tomb. In London, England, one of the most spectacular Roman mausoleums in the city was recently found. It was discovered buried under the ground. The tomb was excavated on a development site not far from London Bridge. The tomb is fascinating, complete with a pair of huge, flowery mosaics. There is a raised platform in the center upon which the burials were once placed. However, most of the tomb was dismantled long ago. Researchers think that during the medieval period, locals tore the mausoleum apart and reused the building materials. But when it was first created, the mausoleum was likely 2 stories high. It may have been the family tomb of a wealthy Roman clan. There weren't any burials found inside the tomb, no coffins or interesting sarcophagi. There were a few scraps of metal uncovered, roofing tiles, and about 100 coins. But all the good stuff was taken out in the medieval days. It's not the only tomb in the region either. The area surrounding the buried mausoleum is home to over 80 Roman burials. Antonietta Lertz, a senior archaeologist, called the site relatively small. She said it dates back to the early phase of London when it was decorated with lavish Roman buildings. It's amazing to know that underneath the modern city streets of England's capital, there are still undiscovered tombs from the days when the Roman Empire occupied the British Isles. Number 6. Hidden church tunnels. In Constantinople, the ancient capital of the Byzantine Empire, currently known as Istanbul, archaeologists excavated a Christian church. Beneath the ruins of the church, they came across a tunnel and some underground rooms. But researchers aren't sure what the purpose of the subterranean structures was. They were most likely built as part of the Church of St. Polyeuctus above them. But were they meant to be part of a crypt? Or maybe they were used by monks who slept underground? It's a mystery underneath what was once the center of Christianity in the Eastern Roman Empire. The underground portion of the church consists of 2 enormous chambers connected via a tunnel. There are still the remains of some mosaics on the floor and some carved marble blocks. But for the most part, the vast underground chambers are completely empty. They were first found in the 1960s, but then covered up by road workers who presumably didn't want to deal with the archaeological headache. In the years since then, the area has become something of an abandoned district. Redevelopment only started recently as part of an effort to transform the derelict neighborhood and its ruins into a tourist attraction. Workers had to re-excavate the underground rooms and tunnel. What about the church above? The Church of St. Polyeuctus was built during the reign of Emperor Justinian in the early 6th century. At the time of its construction, it was one of the grandest buildings in Constantinople. It was in fact the biggest holy building until the completion of the Hagia Sophia in 537. The church is now in ruins, abandoned after an earthquake in the 11th century. Then it received even more damage after the Crusaders ravaged the city in 1204. Some of the more useful architectural features of the building were stolen and taken to places like Barcelona and Vienna. Number 5. The Subterranean Secrets of Pachals' Tomb. In the ancient Maya city of Palenque, there stands the Temple of Inscriptions. It was built as an impressive funerary monument for the mighty ruler Pachal upon his death in 683. But what nobody realized until recently is that underneath this spectacular temple is an underground system of tunnels. Archaeologists uncovered 9 channels, each one about 60 feet in length, that were once used for circulating water. There are 2 things going on here. The first is that the tunnels are an example of a complex hydraulic project undertaken by the Maya. That's impressive all on its own. Then there's the fact that the water tunnels may have been created specifically to lead King Pachal into the afterlife upon his death. They could have been constructed as a symbolic pathway. How did the Maya pull off hydraulic engineering? It was thanks to the natural spring upon which the water tunnels are built. They were constructed between 683 and 702. The natural spring did most of the work of moving the water. The tunnels were only designed in such a way that the water moved underneath the funeral chamber in the direction of where the Maya must have believed the underworld was. Researchers even found an inscription detailing that a god would guide the dead to the underworld by submerging them in water. Number 4. Ancient Neanderthal engravings. For 57,000 years, engravings created by Paleolithic humans remained locked in a secret cave. Ancient cave dwellers became some of the first artists in the world by simply dragging their fingers across the rock walls of their dark home. Thoughts and intentions, likely never to be fully understood, were expressed through dots and lines far beneath the French countryside. When the Neanderthals left, the cave was sealed naturally. Up until recently, the cave art remained inside a natural tomb. The cave was discovered in 1846 above the Loire River. It was briefly excavated in 1912 when archaeologists found charred bones from horses and bison. It was obvious that Neanderthals had hunted here, but nobody looked too much into it. Not until the 1970s did researchers identify finger tracings. Then, in 2016, researchers used new technology to create 3D models of the engravings. This was what really allowed them to see the artwork for what it truly is. The images are not decipherable by any means. Archaeologist Eric Robert from the National Museum of Natural History in Paris said the images are not for us. Eric said nobody alive today has the keys to understanding the meaning of artwork created so long ago. All anybody can do is look at the lines and squiggles, and they can wonder what the Neanderthals thought as they ran their fingers along the cold cave walls. What do you think the symbols could mean? Let me know your guess in the comments. Number 3. The Churches of Göreme. 2.6 million years ago, Mount Arceus erupted in Turkey. About 7,000 square miles were covered in ash and lava. When the people of Göreme realized they could easily carve the soft rock created by the ash, they began to create small underground communities. In the 4th century AD, they dug themselves cave homes out of the solidified ash and lava. The whole region became a Christian sanctuary. Hermits carved personal cells out of the soft rock and lived lives of solitude. In the beginning, the Christian sanctuaries were not decorated very much. The hermits believed that decoration should be at a bare minimum. Not until around the 9th century did Christians start building massive churches out of the rocks and decorating the hidden caverns with beautiful frescoes. There are dozens of churches in Göreme carved from the refuse of the volcano. The biggest is known as the Church of the Buckle, restored in the 1980s. The frescoes are from the 11th century, created in the Metropolitan style that was so popular back then. Most frescoes have a religious theme, displaying the 12 apostles or a scene from the life of Jesus. Many of the churches also contain crypts, also carved out of the rock, leading even deeper underground. Would you like to visit this place? Let me know in the comments. Number 2. Wems Caves. One of the highest concentrations of ancient Pictish rock carvings in Britain can be found within ancient sea caves on the coast of Scotland. The caves are right outside the ruins of the famous Macduff's Castle, created naturally by the raging sea 8,000 years ago. Inside, there are etchings of animals, Viking longships, and so much more. Researchers believe much of the artwork found here dates back at least 4,000 years. However, most of the carvings were made during the Dark Ages. That was after the collapse of Roman Britain, a time when the Picts of Scotland ruled their land with impunity. The Pictish people are interesting in that most of what is known about their culture comes from outside sources. Early medieval texts do suggest the existence of a Pictish language, but its exact details are a mystery. By the late 9th century, most of Scotland was speaking Middle Gaelic. The Pictish kingdom only really lasted around 160 years, yet in that time they left a lot of themselves across the landscape. Pictish society didn't leave almost anything in the way of their own writing, but left rock carvings on pretty much every surface they could find. There are Pictish stones all across Scotland, and of course the drawings here in Wems Caves. There are other interesting etchings in the caves too. Centuries after the Picts were gone, Christian pilgrims left their marks in the caves. Hermits made their own strange engravings on the rough walls too. Everybody who came wanted to leave something behind. Number 1. Mystery Cave Figurine. In an Italian cave, archaeologists from Sapienza University in Rome came across a figurine from 7,000 years ago. Researchers say the figurine depicts a female something. They don't know what. Maybe a queen, maybe a deity, maybe an alien. Nobody knows what it is, only that it has feminine features. The cave it was found in, Batifrata Cave, is at the outlet of an ancient spring. This would have been a point of interest for human communities in the Stone Age. They would have gathered around the natural spring as a source of fresh water. It makes sense in that case that they used the nearby cavern as a place to hold their rituals. This incredible sculpture, even if it is only a few inches long, was likely involved with those ancient ceremonies. The figurine was only just discovered. It's been sent to the Department of Ancient Sciences at Sapienza to be further studied. Researchers are hoping that it will teach them more about the ancients who lived in this part of Italy. And hopefully they'll even learn more about the rituals practiced in the cave. Thanks for watching! How do you think it felt to be a hermit living in a tiny cell you carved yourself from a chunk of rock? Do you think you could do it? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and come back soon. Bye!